Sup guys, my name is Courtney Budzyn and this is What's for Din. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a moist, tender, absolutely delicious, out of this world pot roast. It's something so simple, a lot of households make it, but I'm going to show you how to perfect it. A lot of times people have a problem making pot roast because it's dry and tough. Well, today I'm going to show you how to make a pot roast that will not go wrong. This is a foolproof pot roast. Anyone can make this and it turned out absolutely perfect. You're gonna need some baby red skin potatoes. I have some and I quartered some depending on how big it was. You're also gonna need some chopped up onion, some chopped carrots that I peeled and washed, some minced garlic, and then I have an array of seasoning here, and I know it looks like a lot, but you have a lot of meat to season. I have some garlic powder, some rosemary, Italian seasoning, cayenne pepper, and a little pinch of cinnamon, and I feel like the cinnamon makes a big difference in the flavor. You're also gonna need some flour, and then we have some red wine. That also makes a difference in the flavor. And then I have a combination of beef broth and chicken broth. I find that using both the different stocks or broths together makes for a better flavor. That's just my opinion. You can use all beef, all chicken, whatever you want to do. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. And of course, you're going to need a boneless chuck roast. Now I'm using a 3-pound chuck roast. You can use 4 pounds, 5 pounds, whatever you want to do, but the bigger you have it, the more it's going to need to cook in the oven, obviously. And you're also going to need a little bit of vegetable oil because we're going to brown it in the pan. So that's going to be our first step. We're going to go over to the stove, brown this in the pan, because let me tell you, it makes all the difference. That brown fond that's in the bottom of the pan is what adds so much flavor, and you don't want to skip this step. So just trust me on that. Let's go over to the stove and we'll get started. So before we start to brown the meat, we're going ahead and season everything. Now, don't be afraid to season this like crazy. Make sure you salt and pepper this baby good because that's a big piece of meat there. You don't want to be light-handed with it. Let's just put it that way. So I'm just going to take all my seasonings that I already put in this little cup and mix it together. That way it's evenly distributed across the entire thing of meat. And now we're gonna just sprinkle some of that on top, do half on top and half on bottom. And before we flip it, I'm gonna press the seasoning into the meat, kind of rubbing it in a little bit. Go ahead and rub some on the sides. Now that you have it all pressed into the meat, now we're going to add a little bit of flour. And what the flour does is create an extra layer of fond in the pan. You get more brown bits doing it this way, and those brown bits is what adds a lot of flavor to the sauce. So I have a pan here and I have my heat on high, and to that I'm just gonna add a little bit of oil. You don't wanna add a ton, but just enough to get that meat nice and brown. And now to our oil, we're going to add our meat. And you can hear that nice sizzle. That's what you want because that's what's gonna create the brown bits. And you wanna just cook this until it's brown on the opposite side. You're not looking to cook it all the way through, obviously, so just brown it on the other side and then flip it. So now that the other side has brown color on it, all I'm doing is just leaning it on its sides just to get a little bit of color there. So now that all the sides have nice color to it, I'm gonna go ahead and put it right into our roasting pan. And we're just gonna set that aside. Now my pan has a lot of bits in the bottom. That's what you want. But right now it's super, super hot and you have to be careful. And I notice a lot of recipes do not tell you this, but if you add wine right now to this pan, as hot as it is, there's a chance that it's going to flambe, which means fire. And a lot of people don't want that. That's not wrong if it does happen, but for those of you who are beginners and don't want to get scorched, I don't suggest adding it right away. So you can see, if you can see this, my pan is steaming pretty hot. So I give it a couple of seconds and then I add my wine. I could have probably waited longer, but I didn't. So now all you want to do is take a spoon or a spatula on the bottom and go ahead and scrape any of those bits. So go ahead and turn off your heat once you get everything off the bottom, and you can just set that aside for now. So I'm going to put all my onions just along the sides. You can put some on top. I kind of leave some on top, not a ton. Of course, the carrots, and then add your potatoes. And now we're going to season that with salt and pepper. And then our minced garlic, just scatter that. You want most of it on the outside, but I like to take a little bit in my hand and put that on the top and just kind of press it into the meat. And because we're cooking this at such a low temperature, you do not have to worry about the garlic burning, which is awesome. So now we're gonna add our chicken broth and beef broth. Now you wanna have this a little over halfway. You want the liquids to come up a little bit over halfway of the sides of the meat. So depending on how big your roaster is, you may need a little bit more or less broth than I'm using. And of course you don't wanna forget that wine. So go ahead and pop a lid on it, and I'm gonna cook mine at 275 degrees, which is really low, for a minimum of 3 hours. I'm gonna start checking on mine at 3 hours. Now the thing with chuck roast is you cook it 1 hour per pound. So if you have a 4 pound, 4 hours, 5 pound, 5 hours. So just go by what you have, start checking on it at that time. And the thing is with chuck roast, a lot of people have a problem of thinking that they're overcooking it because it comes out dry and tough. When in reality, the problem is just the opposite. You're actually undercooking it when it comes out dry and tough. The thing with chuck roast is it has a lot of fat and those fibrous tissues. They need a chance to break down. And if you're not cooking it long enough, it's not gonna have a chance to break down. So the longer you cook it, the more it's gonna become tender and juicy. And that's where a lot of people run into the problem because they go, oh no, I'm overcooking it. It's dry, so that means I must do it for less time. So then they're just running into a vicious cycle of never cooking it long enough. So I'll check on mine at 3 hours and I'll show you what that looks like. So this part is obviously optional, but I highly recommend that you do it. As you can see, I'm taking the meat out of the pan and setting it aside, as well as the potatoes and the veggies, because I want to reserve that liquid in the pan. And then all I do is leave the liquids in that roasting pan, and I keep that right on the stove, and I turn my burner on about medium high to get the liquids simmering. And in a separate cup, I have some really cold water and some cornstarch that I just whisk together and make sure it's nice and mixed. And you want this to be really cold, adding it to the really hot simmering liquids, otherwise it's not gonna thicken properly. And once you have it all mixed together, just go ahead and add that to your simmering liquids and give it a good stir, and it should thicken up almost immediately. And just let it simmer for about 2 or 3 minutes to get rid of that cornstarch taste. And then you can just add everything right back into the pan and you're ready to serve. So this is what the finished product looks like, and it smells stinking good in here. If only you could smell how good it is. It's just insane. So I want to show you guys that this falls apart. And if you really wanted it to shred, like super fall apart, just cook it for an extra 30 minutes. But look at that. Oh my gosh. Just look how amazing that is. That is tender, falling apart. My goodness gracious. This is a flavor bomb that just went off. So I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me, and if you do want to remake this recipe, just look below in the description box. I'll leave all the measurements as well as the written instructions below. And if you did like this video, don't forget to smack that like button. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.